would you like to start us off?
Yes, thank you. Welcome everyone to the February 11th meeting of the Clean Water Board. I'll go through the agenda really quickly, but the general purpose of this meeting that we hold in February is to reconcile between the recommendation the board made back in December and any adjustments that came in as a result of the e-board emergency boards fiscal updates in January, and potentially discuss any tweaks that might have occurred during the governor's recommended budgeting process. So we'll have Tim Taylor reviewing the Clean Water Fund operating statement. Then Secretary Moore will be going over the governor's recommended FY27 state fiscal year 2027 clean water budget. Then Secretary Moore will go into a little bit of legislative priorities. Sarah Coleman will look at preview our budgeting process for the fiscal year 28, because of course, as soon as we get 27 in, it's time to start working on 28, right? And then we'll have a section for public comment, wrap up, and next steps. So our consent agenda for today, for this meeting, has the December 2nd, 2025 meeting minutes. That's the only item on our consent agenda. And I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I'd move that, Doug.
Is there any discussion? Any members that would like discussion on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, looking for a second.
I can second.
All right. All in favor say aye or raise your hand in Teams. So aye.
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 All opposed? All right. Our consent agenda is approved. All right. So now I'll hand it over to Tim Mateer to go through our operating statement.
Thanks, Doug. I am going to be speaking to this artifact here, which is this Clean Water Fund operating statement. So you can see we have the columns, the yellow columns, which represent the revenue forecast as of July 2025, and then the green columns represent the consensus economist forecast for January of 2026. So the Clean Water Fund revenue projections were updated as a result of the economist consensus revenue report on January 16th, 2026, which had the following impacts. Meals and rooms tax revenue decreased by $120,000 in FY26, $114,000 in FY27, and then I'll say this, although it's not as germane to FY27, but also $108,000 in FY28, and in FY28 there was also a clean water surcharge reduction of $10,000. So you'll see that that's that delta in the meals and rooms tax row between the yellow and the green for all the fiscal years I mentioned. And those are all the updates that were made as a result of the January 16th economist consensus revenue forecast report.
All right. Do any board members have any questions for Tim?
Chair Farnham, if I might flag, we can return back to this operating statement, but there is one other adjustment to the contingency reserve line, which is a couple lines from the bottom. And that's an adjustment being proposed today in front of the board to address some of these downgrades as seen. Mm-hmm. And Secretary Moore will talk a little bit about this in the next section. Yes. Thank you.
Right. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I think it boils down to, we had a minor change in our revenue forecast in January, a minor negative downgrade, right? For both FY26 and 27, the cumulative impact of that, we're recommending we offset by a transfer from the contingency reserve, as opposed to reducing individual line items in the budget itself. As a reminder, that contingency reserve is just something the Clean Water Board maintains as a good practice. There's no specific percentage. There's no specific requirement. I personally do not believe using that money will have any impact on discussions about rating agencies or any other macroeconomic impact on state of Vermont. There are a number of special funds. They all operate differently. A lot of them operate without this contingency, but I do think the way that we've approached it is practical, and it has benefited us in the past to maintain this reserve. So, are there any questions from board members on this topic before we move to Secretary Moore? All right, seeing none, Secretary Moore, we'll start item number 3.
Sure. So I'm going to be talking about the governor's recommend clean water budget and some relatively modest changes that were made following our last board meeting. First, drawing your attention, oh shoot, I'm not scrolled over far enough to tell you what line number. If you're looking at line 4.5 under tier 3, the first change relates to municipal pollution control grants. As you may recall, generally we seek $4 million in municipal pollution control grants each year. We had reduced that number somewhat as a result of unexpected need for state match related to the state revolving loan fund dollars that we access from EPA. We had also in a previous year budget set aside $800,000 for federal match should additional federal funding opportunities become available. This seemed like the moment to access those funds, and it left us about $78,000 short of meeting that $4 million target for municipal pollution control grants. We had put forward sort of a standalone request to the governor's team that develops the capital bill for that additional $78,000. Unfortunately, they were unable to fulfill that request. I believe they said they had 7 times the amount of asks for capital bill dollars as were available this year for budgeting, since it is the second half of the biennium, which leaves us with 3.92 million in the municipal pollution control grant line item in the budget that the governor sent to the legislature in the middle of January. The other changes indicated in this in the updated statement are really around the areas that Doug just spoke to, where we are tapping into a modest amount of the contingency reserve. We know that this is more art than science in predicting our budget and anticipating what the revenue is going to be. Our hope is we may not need to use those contingency reserve funds at all, but felt like it was a better approach to tap the contingency reserve and propose to tap the contingency reserve if needed to leave the budget whole, than to make reductions with the potential that we would end up with additional funding at the end of the year, having already made those accommodations. So those two are kind of the key items to flag for everyone regarding changes since we last spoke. There was one other that I would describe as sort of a Scrivener's error. It related to how the money going to some of the ag water quality programs was spread across Clean Water Fund and one-time money, I believe, which we have corrected, but that has no effect on the bottom line proposal, and so isn't highlighted in the table you have. Happy to answer questions if folks have them, but generally I would say it's a pretty even report, largely consistent with the conversations we had at our December board meeting. I don't know if Sarah or Gianna, you want to clarify anything I said there too. Happy to have you weigh in.
That was a great summary. Thank you.
Thanks.
We do have a draft motion for the board in consideration of using the contingency reserve.
Yes. So if somebody would be willing to move the use of the contingency reserve as reflected in this table, I would be most appreciative.
I recommend using the contingency reserve as represented in the table.
Great. So do you want to take that the rest of the way through?
Yeah. Do we have a second?
I'd be happy to second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye or raise your hand in Teams. Aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. So the consent, sorry, let me just make sure I'm reading it. The motion exactly was to, by Jim, was to, for the board to recommend as represented in the use of the contingency reserve as represented in this operating statement that was included in the materials. And someone may have, apologies, someone may have written that down more precisely than I did. All right, it looks like we are good with that section. Secretary Moore, would you like to move on to legislative session priorities?
Yeah, there are just a few bills that are active this session that I wanted to make sure the board was aware of. The one that probably is most germane to our interests is H119, which is an act relating to the beverage container redemption system. This bill is currently in the House Environment Committee. And what part of what is being proposed here as a component of a larger overall modernization of the bottle bill system would be to redirect a portion of the sheets for the next 4 years to support the necessary upgrades to the bottle bill system. The current estimate of how much is needed is somewhere between, I think, $3.3 and $3.9 million. I believe the bill is drafted saying it would be $3.5 million spread out over 4 years, never to exceed $1 million in a year. And also it would be on a reimbursement basis. So if those expenses weren't accrued by by standing up these redemption centers, the money would remain in the Clean Water Fund. I will honor that this is a bit of a challenging space for the Agency of Natural Resources, and these are sort of both of our children. And that also, I think, there's an argument to be made that by rights, the sheets probably should go to solid waste management priorities as opposed to clean water. And so have worked hard with key legislators and the team here to work to try to balance those concerns, but wanted to make everyone aware that proposal appears to be moving forward through the House. There are a couple of other bills that I would flag just as having ties to our work. The next would be S29 and H86, which are pretty close to the same bill. I wouldn't say they're identical at this point, but they are close. This relates to a chloride contamination reduction program. So this is work that would be sent to ANR to establish something that looks like the Green Snow Pro program in New Hampshire. For those who are familiar with it, it provides liability protections to, in particular, private property owners that agree to reduce their salt application consistent with a set of BMPs. We have been testifying both in support of this bill and indicating that we are, but it needs to come with resources. As currently drafted, the bill does not require the agency to do anything until resources are identified, but would flag for the board that there has been some discussion in the legislature that the Clean Water Fund could be one potential source of funding for this bill. We have indicated that is a lower priority than the existing needs within the Clean Water Fund, but know that conversation continues in the State House as we speak. And then finally, just one other update I wanted to add is there is a bill, I think it's S224, that it has a number of different water related provisions in it. This includes work around some of the efforts we had oh gosh, Misty, I may have to phone a friend here. 224 is in Senate Natural right now.
Yep.
And that includes dam safety provisions, is that correct? Use of public waters
Use of public
pieces.
ways, yep.
Taking another look at some of the wake
Wake
boat
boats.
regulations we have promulgated in the last couple of years. But it is a pretty broad water quality bill. And so if there are other things that may be germane to the work of this board, I would say that is a bill where they may show up. And then the last one to put on your radar is H632, which is our housekeeping bill. Generally, those tend to be technical corrections and other fairly modest changes that we are seeking to statute. But it is also a place where priorities of legislators may land in the water quality space. And so that is another bill that's worth tracking. And with that, I'm happy to pause and take questions if folks may have them.
I have a quick question, Julie.
Yeah.
Going back to H119, if this gets, if they improve the whole bottle situation here in the state, does that mean 4 years down the road, there may be the potential for increased e-sheets as well?
Yeah, I don't know that there's been an analysis done, Chad, about what impact bottle bill modernization is predicted to have on the unclaimed deposits. Honestly, my guess would be it could have the effect of reducing the amount of unclaimed deposits if it became more convenient for Vermonters to return their redeemables. Right now, at least in certain parts of the state, it is incredibly inconvenient. And so I suspect a lot of people are just putting them in their recycling bin because they don't want to deal with the hassle. That said, I believe the proposal would see maybe 20 modern bottle recycling stations established statewide. So it's still going to be fairly spread out. And so I think it is a little hard to predict. I believe the first year this change would impact the Clean Water Fund is not until state fiscal 29. So it does not affect the budget that we're going to start work on later this year, which is good in that we'll know the final resolution of the bill before we start our budget build. Otherwise, it could be challenging as we spin up the interagency finance team to actually have a good estimate about what they will be working with.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, if there are no other questions, Doug, I'll pass it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Secretary Moore. Yeah, and I have nothing to add on that section. Julie covered everything extremely well. I think, Julie, actually one question from me. I think at this point, is it fair to say that most of these items are in flight? We don't have fixed positions on them at this point, and we're kind of working with the legislature and evaluating them?
Yeah, I would say that is accurate. We have, on each of those bills, we have provided testimony. So we have let them know what our concerns are, but they're continuing to be worked, and I'm not sure any of them have passed out of committee at this point. So they are still in the early stages.
And sorry, for clarification, especially for everyone watching, the we that I used in that case was the we of the administration, not the we of the Clean Water Board, right? The Clean Water Board has not expressed any opinions on any of these bills. We're just getting briefed. That we is getting briefed right now. Sorry for being imprecise with my language. Okay, well, let's move into public comment. Sarah Coleman.
Sure, and we'll if okay, we'll do a preview of the clean water budget process next, and then public comment.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my eyes jumped to the next section. Apologies. Yes, we're on section 5. Right.
Okay, great. So this timeline for the upcoming state fiscal year 2028 budget process, should look largely unchanged to the previous budget process, where we start with a board meeting in July, which is reflected in green. The emergency board action is in yellow throughout the budget development process, with actions of the administration in that gray color, and closing up in the spring of 2027. So we wanted to show that to you, and just give an opportunity for discussion and debrief of the state fiscal year 27 process, and if anything is missing, or and how to facilitate more engagement with the board. As a reminder, we instituted the July meeting last year as a way to engage more and set strategic direction for the budget development. Because once the budget process gets rolling in the fall, the timing can really get much tighter. And so the intent with that July meeting was to be able to have more in-depth engagement and strategy setting. And then another related dimension that we could talk about is just that, we've, there's, for some board members, there can be a challenge in figuring out how to plug in. And so just wanted to share some brainstorming in that space, where Chair Farnham has offered to meet one-on-one with board members about their role and ways to support the Clean Water Board. And I believe Secretary Moore also had this suggestion and proposal of having at least one in-person Clean Water Board meeting a year to facilitate that engagement and relationship building and face time. Gianna, do you have anything else to add to context, and then maybe could have more discussion?
No, I think that's great context. Is that a reminder of why we established the July meeting? Maybe we were hoping to check in with the board about how they felt July meeting was used and the value of it, and whether that's meeting some of the needs for engagement, or if there's other thoughts on preparing for the next budget season that we should think about to really help set the strategic direction and plug in all board members.
Maybe I can just add a little bit here too, which is and really looking to hear from Jean and Jim and Chad on this, is understanding or having heard some, I think, frustration or at least questions in previous budget development processes about sort of what is the role of the public members of the board. We have been doing some brainstorming about ways to hopefully make that engagement more meaningful for you all, recognizing there's a lot of pretty weedy work that gets done by the Interagency Finance Committee and bringing those recommendations forward. That can, I suspect, feel a bit impenetrable when you're confronted with it, right? Because it's already sort of been rolled up into pretty high level categories. And so really, I think what Sarah and Gianna are flagging is some ideas we've put forward to try to create a space for a somewhat deeper engagement in those early stages of the budget development. And would love your feedback up to and including if this misses the mark, but that was the intention in proposing to change our process.
I'm sorry, but just speaking for myself, I mean, I get the intention, and thank you for your help with the weeds. I agree. And it would be nice, I think, to get us all in one room together at some point is also, I think, a wise move. So thank you for the intention. Timing in the summer is a little tight, but let's see what we can do.
And I'll just chime in there. I think that it's a great idea. And I'm all for it. So I love the idea of, because I sometimes struggle with the idea of like, well, what's my role? And how can I be of better service? So thank you very much for doing this.
Personally, I think, yes, the timing in the summer, like the July meeting, I think I would be able to make that work in person, but I think that might be tough to corral. And I also think the October meeting for me is the most likely candidate for one where being in person will be really good, because I've personally noticed when I'm interacting through Teams, I sometimes want to jump in and then I don't jump in. Whereas if I'm in person, my body language will kind of give it away a little bit better, and then that'll start the conversation, right? And I think one of the things we could really use at that October meeting is to make sure we're having a good discussion where we're not holding back if we have reservation about how any of the line items are being addressed. Again, we want to make sure we have that chance to just reset strategically in July if we need to on certain areas. But then that October meeting is the real meat and potatoes, in my opinion, of when we want to make sure people are feeling good, the board members are really feeling solid about the recommendation. So I'm not
Yeah.
quite saying that's the meeting I think should be in person, but I'm mostly
Yeah,
saying it.
Well, and yeah, I didn't mean to indicate that we were trying to highlight the July meeting because of its special purpose in the timeline, but not suggesting that that was therefore the in-person meeting. And I think you gave some good reasons why the October one might be better used for that. Is there any more discussion on the July meeting and ways to facilitate that meeting, its goal and intent around more engagement and strategy setting?
And again, if thoughts come up later, I'm happy to take the one-on-one meetings or thoughts directly, as long as it's just to me. We can, we're complying with public meeting laws if I'm just checking in with you as members of the board and seeing how everything's going and how things are working for you.
Thank you, Chair Farnham.
All right. All right, I believe we are good on item number 5 then. Sarah, I think good to move on to 6?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, so that brings us to our public comment. We had David Provost sign up, but is he online?
I can check it again. I don't think I've seen him.
And while we double check, just want to acknowledge that we've also received written comments from Peggy Stevens and Sylvia Knight, and those would be included in the materials.
David is not in the meeting.
Okay. And so in that case, is there anybody else online or in the room that would like to give comment?
We're all staring at you.
I feel like I should. So just Wendy Harrison, State Senate. I actually am chair of institution, so it's interesting for me and actually helpful for me to see, what your ask is going to be and the amendments. But I just really wanted to be here in person because I like being places in person. And it's hard to tell what's happening online. And it's a critical function that you all do. I mean, this funding is important for so many areas. So I don't only care about stormwater utilities. I just do care about stormwater utilities. So I'm just here, and if it is awkward to have me here, just let me know. Cause
Not at all.
okay, but
And so sometimes we do have more people in person at our meetings, just it doesn't happen to be this one.
okay. And if there's ever a time when you want me to step out because you want to talk to each other, that's fine.
Oh, no, these are fully
Okay.
public meetings, so
Okay.
you're always welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we've never attempted to exercise the executive session option. I'm not even sure this particular board has the authority to exercise executive session. We've never looked into it, Senator. We've never tried to use it.
No, and I wouldn't, public, it's also really important to me to have everything be public as much as possible because we're doing the public's business, but I understand the difference between staff and legislators, and I just want to respect the boundaries.
Thank you.
Yeah, for additional context, Senator, since I think we have time, with other professional boards that go into executive session, I think a lot of the functions that are performed in those executive session might be happening in our interagency working group that kind of works on and puts everything together in between the board meetings. So, and also because this is such a tapestry of so many programs, agencies, and departments. So I think that may be one of the differences. Julie, is that a fair way to characterize it?
I think so. And the other piece, I guess I would say is some of the work of the interagency finance team gets much more weedy, but even that's being done, I think, as members of the public participate in that, Sarah, or is that really only staff? That's only staff. So that may be the place where some of those conversations that would be more awkward to have members of the public join us take place, as we're sort of wrestling between different programs and in order to articulate a single set of priorities that we would recommend to the board. But so that there is space for some of those types of conversations too. It's just, but in this meeting, it really is intended to engage the public as well as engage our public board members.
Good. So maybe I'll let other folks know about it.
Yeah.
Because I actually really want to know more about, there's details. So I like getting into the weeds, and presumably everyone here likes that also.
Yes.
So that's another reason for me to be here. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we can also chat with you after the meeting about
Oh, I
some of
understand.
our outreach on
Okay.
how to promote it and where we promote it and things like
Okay.
that, where to point people to if you're interested.
Great, sure.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we'd love spreading the word.
All right. Sarah, do we need to give one more call? I think we're good on public comment then.
Yeah, I didn't see anybody raise their hand or unmute from online, so I think we should be okay.
Doug, I do have one announcement.
Yeah, go ahead. That's right.
I am going to actually be stepping away from the Clean Water Board at sort of the end of the current fiscal year process. And Misty Cinsigali, who I hope Jean and Jim and Chad, you may have all had the opportunity to meet in some capacity, who is our DEC commissioner, is going to be taking my seat on the board. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
No, sure. Yeah, so nice to meet folks that I haven't online. Nice to meet you in person. Misty Cinsigali, DEC Commissioner. I've been lucky enough to be here at DEC for about 7 months now. I came from the federal government and worked in the water, wastewater, stormwater kind of funding arena at USDA Rural Development, doing a lot of different things for over a decade. So worked with the great folks at DEC before coming on, was very excited for the opportunity, and then even more excited to kind of dive into this with you all moving forward. So it's a great opportunity. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me if you want to grab coffee, you want to introduce yourself, want to have a conversation. And I look forward to working with you all in the future. And I'm here at National Life 5 days a week usually. So feel free to stop in and say hi.
Yeah, I think, Julie, your shoes are extremely hard to step
Yeah.
into as a participant of the board. But if anyone is qualified to do it, it's Misty. I think especially before, I forget how many hats I wear right now, but
Yes,
before my last
right.
couple of hats, I was completely unaware of the amount of interaction USDA Rural Development has in the water space, and particularly, with our municipal structures. I think they're a huge partner, an incredibly important partner. And like another example of that is, I think it's like 27 million or so that we're of disaster recovery funding that is getting closer, hopefully, to rolling out.
Yes.
That's focused
I
on
hope so.
wastewater systems.
Yes.
And it's a big piece of the puzzle for a lot of our rural communities, communities that are trying to grow, and being able to grow in a responsible way that doesn't have a negative water impact. So I never knew how big a part of the puzzle they were. Like, I would not have made that connection to USDA even 3 or 4 years ago. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been I always say USDA was the best kept secret, which it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't be given the great things, but it's great partners, right? It's the federal partners with the state partners. And what I always continue to say is Vermont really sets precedent after working nationally for the last year or prior to coming into this role. Nationally on the waterfront, disaster waterfront, actually water wastewater front, we do a lot of things and a lot of things well that a lot of people pay attention to. So we should be very proud of all of those things, and continue to work hard no matter what the federal environment is to keep doing the great work we do with the partners. So thank you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
shoes that are impossible to fill. I would agree with you on that, Doug. So I don't even try. I just.
And a complete non sequitur, since we have a couple minutes, and just something to share with the board members and anyone in the public who's happening to be watching this. I would very strongly echo what Missy just said about Vermont's role and how we interface nationally as well. Because when I went down to visit Asheville, North Carolina, and tour some of the damages there and speak with local communities, so today I'm speaking as Chief or Clean Water Board Chair. My other hat is Chief Recovery Officer for the state, right? And in that role, I visited Asheville, North Carolina, and spent a little under a week giving them advice on how to set up their recovery, how to approach. And one of the most impactful things to me was touring a lot of the locations, looking at their stormwater systems, looking at their wastewater systems, and how far ahead Vermont is up from North Carolina in many ways, right? They have a much more deregulated structure, and that showed up in a lot of unnecessary damage. And so there were many people there that were interested in talking about, okay, how do we get to where Vermont is? And one of my pieces of advice was, whoa, don't go try to go from 0 to 100. You need to figure out a long-term plan. You have a tapestry here, and I use that word twice now in one meeting. That's a bad sign. Stormwater systems that you need to make rational investments in improving and strengthening over time. Do not try to jump all the way. If you can in a certain scenario, great, but set your expectations reasonably and take a measured path to strengthening your systems. There were a lot of systems, there are stormwater systems in particular. I visited a lot of properties that were just destroyed by their neighboring properties because there was zero stormwater anything, right? It was just like pipes coming out of a hill that pointed right at a building downhill. So, and I think coming from that to a statewide rational approach it's a lot of work, and it needs to happen gradually. So I think we've got a lot to be proud of here. And it was very interesting to visit Asheville and see how in an extremely significant event with in some places over 30 feet of water, how those systems play out and how they are important to protecting us. right, on that cheery note,
Well, welcome, Commissioner. I'm excited to have you join. the board.
welcome, Missy. All right, I think we can move into wrap up then. So as a reminder, right, what we've effectively recommended here, because the contingency reserve is not an appropriated item, we've recommended that the GovRec, the Clean Water Board has now supported that the GovRec stays as it was submitted and moves forward through the legislative review process. Maybe, am I oversimplifying that? Julie or anyone on the team? I think there might have been were there some other line item adjustments? I'm trying to go back to the operating statement and make sure I'm not oversimplifying.
The adjustment that Secretary Moore did speak to is that we had proposed more than 10 million in the capital line and wasn't able to have that move forward to the legislature. So that is somewhat
Right.
downsized for PC grants. So that's the main change for the board.
Okay.
And in terms of like activating the contingency reserve, that will be new for us because we do have the contingency reserve guidelines. But as you suggested, Chair Farnham, we'll also need to wait and see what happens in July, in the July e-board statement, whether these are just sort of temporary downgrades and whether there truly will be a gap in the budget once it comes time to implement in July.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the capital bill and the pressure on that section of government spending continues to escalate. Secretary Moore, Commissioner Sinsagali, and I will probably be involved in defending that as best we can throughout the legislative session, because there's just a lot of pressure in that area, a lot of competition.
Agreed.
All right. And then we, of course, as Sarah put up on the slide, we have that July meeting where we will reconvene. I would say that if there are any I don't expect any, but if there are significant developments in the legislative process where it does appear that the legislature is going to be going in a different direction than this most recent operating statement, we'll make sure the board is aware and kind of probably poll people to see if we feel like a meeting and a discussion is necessary. We'll just have to make sure we approach that in the right way, because if we poll people, it'll be, it'll involve all the members of the board. So it'll be public communications that we'll have to record and everything. And then, Sarah, would you like to handle C and D of section 7 for me?
Sure. So just a reminder that the Vermont Clean Water Initiative 2025 performance report was released in January. And please explore the Clean Water Interactive Dashboard, which is another way to look at the progress that's represented in the performance report. And then also, if you haven't already, just a reminder that you can subscribe to the Clean Water Stakeholder Listserv to be notified of upcoming Clean Water Board meetings, as well as other talks that are happening in our division and program.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And so at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, looking for a second.
I'll second.
All right.
People just want to stay in here and hang out.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. This meeting of the Clean Water Board is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks.
Thanks.